episode 87 of Late Night Linux, recorded on the 13th of April 2020. I'm Joe, and with me are Phelim.
Hello.
Graham.
Hello.
And Will.
Hello.
So here we are. The world has got even worse. Graham, you are not feeling very well, so thank you for coming anyway.
It's just a scratch, that's all.
Right, well, there's definitely nothing else to talk about, so shall we get on with the Linux news? Oh no, maybe I should address the elephant in the room. Hello to any new listeners who may have come from other places, social media and things. I have some personal news that I need to address up the top here. The short version is that I acted unprofessionally, disrespected my colleagues. That was against company policy, and my contract was terminated for gross misconduct. So I'm no longer working for Jupiter Broadcasting, Linux Academy, Cloud Guru, doing the various shows that I was over there. That's all over now. This is the only show that I'm doing for now, working on some other ones, but we'll see. The slightly longer version of this is that I said the C word in front of my colleagues, and that's how I disrespected them and acted unprofessionally. I am working class. I try and hide it a little bit by knowing about number and amount and whatnot, but that is my heritage. And I say the C word quite a lot in my normal life. I'm not going to say it on here, but I think we all know what I'm talking about. See you next Tuesday, that sort of thing. I try my best not to say that on air, but I do say it, as you lot can attest, in normal life. I quite liberally use it, quite casually use it. I became overly familiar with my colleagues is the bottom line. And we were kind of like a group of friends, and I forgot that we were colleagues, I suppose, and said the word around them more than once, and at least one of them complained about it. I never directed the word to a person, as in you C word or F off you C word or something like that. I never did that. It was just casual use of the word in conversation. The history of this is in early March, so just over a month ago, about 5 weeks ago, I had a meeting with HR, which is actually called ES, Employee Success at ACG. I was asked a number of questions, including whether I'd ever said the word, and I told the truth that yes, I had said that word in front of my colleagues, but I did explain that I'd never directed the word towards someone. I was told that I probably wouldn't be fired, and that I would probably be required to undergo some sort of sensitivity training. And I said, yeah, no problem, I will do that. And I explained that I've stopped saying that word. I do not say that in front of my colleagues. You know, now you've brought this to my attention, it's not happening again. I was told that the investigation would be concluded within a few days. And then over the next month, I repeatedly asked them what's going on with this. I wanted updates, and I was told that the investigation was ongoing. And then last week, I received an invitation from a senior manager, and in that meeting I was told that my contract had been terminated. Chris, who was my manager, was not told about my contract being terminated until after my meeting with that senior manager. It's my understanding from public information that the shows that I was running over there have ceased production, at least for the time being. They are Linux Action News, Choose Linux, and User Error. So they are no more. Choose Linux, they said, was on hiatus, so I don't know whether it'll come back, but it won't be coming back with me. I've been speaking to Dan and Popey, and I'm hoping to be working with them on a brand new show soon. Late Night Linux Extra is going to be rebooted. I can't guarantee how often there'll be episodes of it, but expect random content. There's one interview that I've got lined up, hopefully for at some point soon, but we'll have to see how that works out. But there'll hopefully be some content in there. So subscribe to the all episodes feed. That's probably your best bet. And I do have some new show ideas that are in the works, but no guarantees yet. If you want to find out about them, stay tuned to this show or my Twitter, which is @JoeRessington. So I announced this on Twitter, and I got so much love and support from everyone. So I really have to say thank you to all the new listeners, the financial supporters, and the people who sent kind messages. It really warmed my heart. I basically was just glued to my phone and computer for nearly 24 hours, just reading all of this influx on Reddit and on Telegram and everywhere. It was just mad. So thank you everyone for that. And obviously thank you to everyone who was supporting us before all of this on PayPal and Patreon. That is very much appreciated, as it is for everyone. If you want to find out more about that, you can go to latenightlinux.com/support and there's various ways there. And if you support us for $5 or more on Patreon, you can get an advert-free RSS feed. And if you want to get in contact, latenightlinux.com/contact. You see how I snuck the admin section in there.
Right. So we don't use the C word that often in Ireland. It's still not a big deal. And I lived in Glasgow for a good bit where it's used all the time. Shocker. And I have been to London where it's used quite often. And it isn't, it doesn't mean, I think, what the Americans would think it would mean either. That's the thing to point out. Yeah, it's definitely a geographic issue.
Yeah, but it was against their company policy, is what I was told. And so that's why my contract was terminated.
Fair enough.
But yeah, I use the word a lot. I use it in front of my family. They use it in front of me. It's a cultural difference, I suppose, that I didn't properly take account of. And that's why it happened.
Well, that's fair enough that you take it so well. I wouldn't.
But thankfully, this show continues. And like I said, Late Night Linux Extra will have some content. I don't know if it's going to be every other week, or I don't know at this stage, but there will be some things going in there, hopefully. So let's talk about some news then, shall we? And the first one is that the PinePhone UBports Community Edition is available for pre-order now. And what this is essentially the normal PinePhone, but with some UBports branding on it, and it comes pre-installed with Ubuntu Touch. And some of the money, I think it's $10 of the money that you spend on it, goes to the UBports Foundation to help development of Ubuntu Touch. So this is effectively UBports' first OEM deal, which is pretty cool.
It's really nice. I know we've brought it up a few times as well, but the PinePhone's great, but it's really nice to see UBports on a phone, and Ubuntu Touch actually is still living. All these years after it was started. It's lovely just to see the screenshots and see it on there.
I think this is a really nice joint venture, or however you want to describe it, between PinePhone and UBports. Like, these are two distinct projects that we've been following for a while here, and it's really great to see them join up and put this device out there. I'm not really that excited about phones, but this one I am quite interested in, and will probably get one, because I think this is, like Graham says, really nice to see this the Ubuntu Touch still out there, people still using it having moved on so much and matured so much over the last years. I'm very, very excited about it.
And $150, which is really cool.
Yeah, plus shipping, plus taxes and stuff. So
I accept they don't get any of that, so, you know.
Yeah. And it is a low-end phone that we have to keep in mind here. This is not going to replace an iPhone or an Android device. This is for people who want to try out.
It's a low-end phone that isn't running Java, though. So, you know, you have potentially got the advantage that you're closer to the metal as such, and, you know, you're going to get a better performance out of that in the long run anyway. So, I mean, I don't know. I think the jury would still be out. I mean, you can't judge it right now because they're obviously still very much early days. But like, I was looking at the Q&A from the UBports guys, and they were talking about the fact they've got voice working, SMS, GPS, and the accelerometers. Battery performance isn't stunning yet, and the camera's not working. I mean, they're quite a ways along. I mean, they say it's obviously not perfect yet, and it's kind of be for developers to get their hands on this. I mean, it even puts in the caveat that, like, if you expect 1 to 3 dead pixels to be a deal breaker, don't get this, because, you know, that might happen. It's early manufacturing runs and stuff like that. I mean, I think as long as you go along with that, that's fair enough. And I think this could be very good in the future.
The camera is a bit of a, I don't know, disappointment is not the right word. The camera is a bit of a weak point, let's say 5 megapixels. It's probably fine for a lot of people, but, you know, the bar is quite a lot higher than that these days, I would say. And it's only 2.4 gigahertz for Wi-Fi, but it has got an LTE radio in it, which I think is pretty impressive. And it's nice to see a headphone socket, a proper headphone socket.
Yeah, well, I've got one of the original Braveheart editions, and I've talked about it on the show. It does feel like a proper phone. It doesn't feel like a high-end phone necessarily, but it does feel like a decent phone. And for that price, you can't really go wrong with it. And this comes pre-installed with Ubuntu Touch, but there's nothing stopping you sticking an SD card in and booting one of the other community ROMs that are available for it. Like there's a Debian with Phosh, which is the shell that Purism made for the Librem 5. And Phosh is actually really good. I like it. There's you can get post-market OS with Phosh or KDE. Plasma Mobile, they call it. So there's a lot of different operating systems you can run on it, and Ubuntu Touch is one of the more mature ones. But, there's always that caveat that this is for people who like to mess with computers, as Leo would say. It's for people who want to test and report bugs and follow development. And maybe you could use it as a daily driver. I don't know. It depends on your needs. I don't think I could. Well, I couldn't, is the bottom line. Although I don't have to use Slack and Zoom anymore, so that helps.
You lucky bastard.
That was quite nice to sudo apt-get purge those two a couple of days ago. I'll probably have to reinstall Zoom soon enough, but stick to Mumble for now. And a good couple of weeks ago now, UBports announced that they are partnering with Volla, which is a German company, I think, making a phone that's going to have Android on it, but it looks like there'll also be an option for it to come with Ubuntu Touch as well. So that could potentially be their second OEM deal in short order. So things are looking up for them, I think. So I'm sitting here looking at Firefox 75, and there's been a couple of changes. The main one is the search bar. And hands up who thinks I like this change.
So what I'm gathering about this is that you noticed. I didn't notice this until it was pointed out to me by Jeffrey. Yeah. Okay. Go on then.
I noticed it before I even read about it because I was slightly distracted over the last week or so, as you might imagine. And suddenly, whenever I clicked on the URL bar, it just got massive. And I was like, what's going on? I don't like this. And the default click behavior had changed as well. If you do a single click now, it selects the whole URL. But I was used to doing like a double click, or I don't know, it was muscle memory, and that's all changed. And I copy a lot of URLs for my shows that I do. And so now I'm having to relearn that muscle memory. So I'm very annoyed. There's probably a plugin or extension or whatever that will put it back to normal, but that'll eventually break. So I may as well just learn the new way.
I think it's just a setting.
Yeah, but I've been burnt by that before. Changing settings and then they just remove that feature. Like it used to be, you could do type in the URL bar like Google and then Control Enter, and it would do the HTTPS www. and the .com. And you could do Control Shift Enter, and that will give you .org. But that .org just stopped working. I think Control Enter still works. So there's little features like that once they go, I just think, no, I'm not going to bother trying to re-enable them because they'll just eventually just not work at all anymore.
Yeah, well, see, I thought that, and then I found a plugin that manages tabs and groups, so I can do different tabs for different stuff. And I finally, after whenever they killed that tab groups off, that was like years ago, and I finally got a plugin to do it, and thank fuck I did, because I've stopped going spare now in between time.
And I use the Vimium plugin for Firefox, so that the Vim key bindings for the whole thing, and pressing YY will copy the URL to the clipboard. It's true.
This is what a fevered mind does to you.
Yep.
Oh, did that sound strange?
I only use the Emacs shortcuts.
Oh, no, I seriously do. My daily driver is a browser called Qt Browser, which is purely driven by Vim key bindings. So when I have to use Firefox, I need to use this.
Did the nurses take your clothes?
But the biggest story around Firefox 75 seems to be this telemetry on Windows. It doesn't really affect us, but it does affect Windows users. Mozilla wants to know what your default browser is because Edge has a habit of making itself your default browser, and Mozilla want to know about it, which I suppose is fair enough, but it is on by default, and it feels a little bit like not the kind of thing that Mozilla should be doing, really.
I don't know. If you're using Windows 10, you brought this on yourself. And if you're using fucking Edge has got, the worst record for telemetry? So, I mean, no, I don't really care.
I was going to say maybe Windows users are suspicious of Firefox unless it actually does enable telemetry.
Well, it's not mining my data. What's wrong with this thing?
It is a bit curious, though. If you go to the Firefox webpage, they do make a big thing about them being the browser of privacy. And then they go and stick a cron job or whatever they call it, which is, checking your default browser every hour or however often it does. It's not surprising. It is disappointing.
Well, what's also disappointing is that Firefox is now the third most popular browser behind Chrome and Edge.
Is them installing this agent to check default browser a direct result of this news, I wonder?
Possibly. I mean, this is according to net market share, so we don't know. It's always very, very difficult to work out the browser market share.
If only it could be as accurate as DistroWatch.
DistroWatch is very accurate at telling you which distros have terrible SEO. According to Popey, at least, and I believe him. But according to this Register article, they say that by March, Firefox share had dropped from 8.2% in December to 7.19%, and Edge is 7.59%. So it's pretty close still, but I mean, compared to Chrome, which is like 68%, it really is just a minority browser now, Firefox, isn't it? Hands up, admit who here uses Chrome as their main browser.
I do.
Yeah, I do for work stuff because I feel like it's not my personal choice and it works better with Meet.
Yeah, that's it. The corporate tools are Google Docs based. And so, do yourself a favor and use the browser where everything is supposed to work, which is a shame.
Well, I find that Docs works and Drive works in Firefox. I don't know about many of the others. I mean, the spreadsheets one works as well to a pretty good extent. So you can use Firefox, and I do. I usually have Chrome installed, but Firefox is my main browser still. Okay, this episode is sponsored by DigitalOcean. Go to do.co/LNL, and you can get $50 credit with 30 days to use it. DigitalOcean offers VMs, or droplets as they call them, with full root access in data centers all over the world with really fast networking and super fast SSDs. And they offer Ubuntu, Fedora, Debian, CentOS, and FreeBSD, and some container distros. But if you don't want to use one of those, you can upload your own custom image. They have loads of one-click apps like LAMP and LEMP stacks, WordPress, Discourse, GitLab, and it's really easy to set up. These droplets start from as little as $5 a month, and they scale all the way up to multiple cores and huge amounts of RAM and disk space. And they also have CPU-optimized droplets if you want just raw power, and memory-optimized droplets if you need more of that. They have really simple backups that have saved my bacon once or twice, and cloud firewalls that can stop network traffic before it even gets to your VM. It's really simple to add extra storage to your droplet, whether that is block storage or object storage, depending on your needs. So go to do.co/LNL and get your $50 credit. That's do.co/LNL. Back in January, I don't think we talked about it on the show, but IBM announced that Ginni Rometty was stepping down as the CEO and Arvind Krishna would be taking over. But what was particularly interesting about it was that Jim Whitehurst, who was the CEO of Red Hat, was effectively being promoted, I suppose you would say, to president of IBM, which I think is like the one down from the CEO. And Paul Cormier has taken over as the CEO of Red Hat. So it really reinforces the fact that IBM are betting the farm on Red Hat, essentially.
I think they've got to. I think IBM revenues are down. The business is, I don't know if it's struggling necessarily, but it's certainly going through a rough patch. Red Hat seems to be their lifeboat for the whole of IBM, which is quite an extraordinary thing to consider. And probably I am very wrong on this, but as far as I can tell, that seems to be what's happening here.
Cormier was the guy who brought in essentially RHEL back in the day in Red Hat. He was the one who suggested that they should do it. And apparently there's a thing where he said if by the end of 2 months they didn't get 8,000 subscriptions, he'd resign and end up getting 32,000 or something like that.
Yeah, and so IBM are going to continue to run Red Hat as like an independent entity almost, like with its own corporate structure, obviously owned by IBM and everything, because Red Hat is a very successful company. That's why IBM bought them. They are the most successful open source company. But it is very interesting that Jim Whitehurst has been given such a senior position at IBM. I know a lot of people speculated that perhaps he might get the top job. It seems like that might happen one day, but not for now. And the thing is that Red Hat is only a tiny part of the overall revenue of IBM, but clearly IBM see that as the future with the hybrid cloud stuff that they talked about when they bought Red Hat, which I know, Phelim, you hate the cloud, but you have to accept that if you're going to use the cloud, then a hybrid cloud approach is the best, spreading it among different public cloud providers as well as having some on-prem.
It's like ask me if I was going to set myself on fire, which fuel do I think is better?
No, but it's like the browser thing. You know, you don't just use Chrome, you use Chrome as well as Firefox.
No, you use Firefox and damn those sites that don't work for you.
Yeah, just cut off your nose to spite your face, eh?
Do fucking right.
So something quite serious, that is Google and Apple are teaming up to launch a contact tracing system for iOS and Android. Initially as a kind of an app-based thing, but ultimately baked into the operating systems, that is going to use Bluetooth Low Energy, I think, to communicate with other phones around you and inform me if you've come into contact with someone who has got the dreaded virus.
Graham.
No, it's just a cold.
What could possibly go wrong with this idea, I wonder?
Nothing. It's great.
Yeah, well, it'll all be open source and you'll be installing it from F-Droid, no doubt, Phelim.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, they say, yeah, it doesn't use GPS, but I mean, they already know where you are, roughly. And if they know you're roughly near, that's multiple points of where they know where you're near. I don't know. If it was fully open, if it was actually genuinely fully open, I can see that this is a smart thing. I mean, the Irish government over here is doing a similar type of thing, and they've got some developer to write it, and nothing against that developer, but the problem is, if a thing is not open, you can't trust it. It's no use. It's why I don't use Signal, because I can't get an open Signal app from my phone. Therefore, I don't know what it's doing. I don't know who's compiled it and what way they've done it. So, you know, at this point, you're giving an awful lot of information away there. And I don't know about you, but I was turned Bluetooth off anyway. So
I do agree with you, and it's difficult that the I don't know, the far right kind of own the knee-jerk tinfoil hat response, because what the reasoning behind this and the reasoning behind the UK doing the similar kind of thing is it's the right thing. It's a technological solution to a real problem we're going to have. But you can't help but see this as just a chance, a power grab for data. You know, when all our guard is down, and I don't want to be the one to say it, I don't want to be the tinfoil hat extremist, but we still have to be very careful because, you know, there's no going back from these kind of decisions.
It can even be accidental, though. It's where they've used a third-party library that they didn't realise did this, that, and the other. And, oh, yeah, well, here, look, we've got all this extra data. Sure, it'd be wrong to delete it now at this point, wouldn't it?
Mm. Oh, yeah, I don't think for one second that they're going into this with nefarious motivations or anything. But it's just a case of once you open up the floodgates to collect all this data, if it's not done properly, which it almost certainly won't be, then I agree with you, Graham. I don't think it's tinfoil hat to say that. I think it's just sensible.
No, but it normalizes this level of tracing that some people will just never, I don't think will ever come out of.
Yeah, just when we should be thinking about the privacy stuff, we're now getting this. And it's, as you say, normalizing the idea that we're going to be tracked everywhere we go. I mean, we kind of already are with our phones, but this is just being really overt about it. And if kids will install this, you know, it's probably going to be a case, let's face it, that if you don't install the app, you're not going to be allowed in certain businesses. You're probably not going to be allowed to go to school or whatever. And it's like the film Contagion, which I highly recommend everyone watches. It's like if you're scared of spiders, get a load of spiders on you, it'll cure you. And yeah, watch the film Contagion from about 10 years ago. That'll definitely cure any fears. But in that, they have these like armband things, like wristband with a barcode on it that gets scanned to say that you've had the vaccine or whatever. And I could seriously foresee it being that if you don't have this app installed, you're not allowed in cafes and restaurants and whatever.
And Phelim's so absolutely right. You know, with a little bit of extra effort, this can all be done completely open. In a way that we can all trust, and that it has equal scrutiny across all the countries that everywhere about the earth.
I don't see how they can do it not open source, or how they can justify not doing it in an open source way, because it's public money that's paying for it. There's absolutely no reason to be secretive about how it works. But of course, that won't happen.
Well, we had a couple of Microsoft stories, and so I think two of you somehow came up with Microsoft mantelpiece. So let's go with that. The first one is that Windows 10 is getting Linux files integration in the File Explorer. So if you're using Windows Subsystem for Linux, you'll be able to interact with your files in a very simple way from the Windows GUI, which is just yet more reason for people not to bother installing Linux, I think. So
this crosses an interesting boundary, in my opinion, because you've got people who have installed WSL and want to use Linux on the command line, and they also want to use the File Explorer file manager thing to copy the files off of there. And, on the face of it, I wouldn't imagine that those two demographics had much crossover. So is this the democratization of Linux in action?
Maybe. I saw it more as a way to get stuff in rather than out. But either way, I can see the point you're making. It just feels like, as I said, more reasons to not use proper Linux and just to use Windows. Just stay on Windows 10 and you've got all the benefits of the Linux command line. And then at the end of the day, you can play your Steam games.
But more people learning Linux skills is definitely a good thing, being exposed to Linux. Let's say we lost the desktop war, so they carry on using Windows 10, but when they reach out to make their own IoT devices or buy a Raspberry Pi or something, or teach kids Python programming on something, they'll reach out for some small bit of hardware and won't be so afraid of using Linux on it.
And there's the whole cloud story as well. Much to Phelim's delight, I'm sure, but this is the real opportunity. And I think you're right, Graham. The desktop war, well, it never really was a war, was it? But that's fine. People are allowed to use Windows, but now they're going to be deploying to Linux in the cloud, and that is something to celebrate.
All right, well, the other bit of news is that Microsoft has announced a new security model called IPE. So this is an alternative to SE Linux.
I don't think it's an alternative. I think it's another alternative in the LSM collection. So you've got things like SE Linux and AppArmor, and IPE is another entry in that collection. Specifically, I think they've designed it for people using Linux in Azure, so that they can control which binaries are allowed to be executed by users. And it has the standard LSM style that you can put it in enforcement mode or reporting mode. So you can develop your rules and see the results of those rules in the logs before you switch it on for everybody. But I think it's really, it is targeted at Azure users. I don't know that it will ever become a mainstream thing, but we'll see.
Right, KDE Corner then. Before we get to the cute stuff, let's deal with the happier news. Just a quick one that I put in, actually. KDE is now on Instagram. So there's event photos and screenshots and stuff. I can see why you're laughing, but, get out there where the people are and all that and show them how cool KDE is.
They should be on TikTok.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
It's got K's in it.
Kit Cot.
Oh, that's gone badly wrong fast.
All right. Well, you obviously had to put in something about itinerary as well then.
Oh, well, I'm desperately worried. Now all these developers are not traveling to locations. How the hell is the work going to get carried out on KDE itinerary? And ironically, they said that very thing. But they are working on it. And they're actually investigating an alert system, which I thought was actually quite smart because, let's face it, I think travel in the future is going to be one right bee's nest. And, traveling to locations, knowing that you're not allowed to travel, certain restrictions on travel, things like that. So they're investigating that to try and work on a system for that. And they've also been doing a bit of work on hotel and restaurant reservations as well. So expanding what they've got right now. And there is a massive load of work on the Thunderbird integration, which is coming pretty soon. I'm hoping that it'll come out next month or so. And that also brings in some transfer features too, where if you are traveling to a location and you have multiple trains, cars, taxis, whatever, you'll be able to set things like custom home destinations or remote offices and things like that, and then it'll actually be able to work out automatic transfers for you as well. So lots of work going on there, which is quite cool.
Right, what's this Maui project that someone's put in?
Right, so Maui is a way to build applications in a kind of simple toolkit, and that using Kirigami and the KDE utilities is got a nice status report on it, and I think people should check it out because some of the applications there are really nice. They've got a kind of consistent look and feel and are very easy to develop. So if people want to get involved, it might be a bit of fun.
All right, well, I mentioned Qt. So back in January on the Qt blog, they said that there were going to be some changes and that the LTS versions would be available to commercial licensees only, and it was going to potentially cause a problem. Well, that has resurfaced over the last week or so with a KDE developer called Olaf Schmidt-Weisschurfer saying that having had some conversations with Qt, it's not looking good. Basically, it's looking like they are going to start charging for all versions of Qt. So you're going to have a license. But then, curiously, Qt put up on their blog a very short statement. I can read the entire thing. There have been discussions on various internet forums about the future of Qt open source in the last 2 days. The contents do not reflect the views or plans of the Qt company. The Qt company is proud to be committed to its customers, open source, and the Qt governance model. So that's quite confusing, isn't it? How come one of the KDE developers is saying that there's going to be a problem here and Qt are saying that, no, it's all hunky-dory?
Well, I'm purely guessing, right? I don't have any inside information, but the Qt project is always seemingly struggling for revenue, to generate revenue. And the coronavirus is mentioned by Olaf in his post about the Qt project perhaps temporarily suspending this release of the open source versions to try and generate more income. So on the one side, they've got this pressure of keeping their developers employed and keeping the momentum going up, keeping the releases coming, which I'm totally sympathetic with, of course. But on the other hand, the action that the Qt project always seems to take is to punish basically the open source licensees. They never seem to be able to get the two to, which they should work in sympathy with one another, because it's objectively true. I think that the two projects are stronger. The open source projects that use Qt and the private projects that license Qt, they're both stronger by them both working together. And those two things never seem to come to reality, at least from the Qt project's perspective. And so I think that's what's happening here. Is the Qt project, is the Qt company behind Qt is desperately trying to increase revenue and looking at all kinds of avenues and penalizing users of its open source version.
And so the inevitable talk of forking it has come around, and the potential name is going to be KT instead of Qt.
Great.
How do you feel about a fork of Qt, Phelim?
I mean, one of the advantages Qt always had over, one of the advantages KDE always had over GNOME is the fact that they didn't have to develop the toolkit at the same time, which meant they could actually develop the applications, develop all the libraries, and, I think in general, technically it's a better project. I mean, that's, a matter of opinion, whatever, but a lot of the stuff that GNOME is having problems with now is because they had to develop the toolkit, they had to develop the all those sides without being able to take advantage of all the extra work that goes in. And I think it would be a lot of burden, I think, to develop that extra Qt. But the funny thing is, I have a feeling that if they did, and a large quantity of corporate developers got on board with it, because they're not going to want to get hit by licensing that they don't need to, you could end up with the open version being the new de facto standard.
That doesn't bode well for the Qt company then, if that does turn out to be what happens.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that's I don't know, I wouldn't like to call it, but either way, the two would become different products.
Yeah, it's a lose-lose scenario, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, hopefully this will get sorted out and everyone will go back to playing Happy Families, but somehow I suspect it's going to be more complicated before that happens. And I think if I had to bet money on it, I'd say that the fork is going to happen. How successful that fork will be remains to be seen, but we'll see. All right, well, we better get out of here then. Remember, subscribe to the All Episodes feed if you want to get Late Night Linux Extra as well. But we'll be back in 2 weeks with the main show. And until then, I've been Joe.
I've been Phelim.
I've been Graham.
And I've been Will.
See you later.